Hey, I'm Cody, and this is the Mutant Menace, and I thought we could talk about some comics today. Powers of 10, issue number 2, was written by Jonathan Hickman with art by R.B. Silva. It was inked by R.B. Silva in addition to Adriano di Benedetto, with colors by Marte Gracia, lettering by Virtua Calligraphy's Clayton Cowles, and design work by Tom Muller. So this issue opens with Moira and Charles Xavier going to meet Magneto in his Bermuda Triangle hangout, and it's basically, this, to my knowledge, is the first time that Moira has tried to make an alliance with both of them consecutively and get them all in one project. You know, we don't know what happened in Life 6, but this is kind of noteworthy that she's in our current life. If we're to believe that this is Life 10, she's uniting both of them, and all three of them are going to kind of convene in a common goal. And one thing I noticed is that it's these three powers, these 3 points coming together, and they're meeting in the Bermuda Triangle. So just noticing, paying attention to patterns, we're seeing threes come into play in the Bermuda Triangle with the meeting of these 3 minds. So that was kind of fun. I like that everyone is clearly illustrated to be quite young. So this is happening, you know, earlier in their lives. Magneto, when he takes off his helmet, he looks very youthful, which is something that caught my eye. I thought it was interesting that Moira asks Magneto, or Charles does, I can't remember exactly who, but they say, who decides between good and evil? And Magneto says, I do, which is the most Magneto answer. It's kind of his own delusions of grandeur, his kind of like, I decide these things. I like what is said here about apart we always lose, and together is kind of our only hope. That was really cool, and that they're gonna, you know, they're playing the long game here. Moira knows what's up. They're gonna form a plan. It's long term. It's ambitious, and they're gonna do it. So this was cool, seeing the meeting of the minds happen. Next up, we see Cyclops and Xavier and Magneto discussing the information they've stolen, and they're discussing a full assault on Orcas. They're learning about Orcas. They're learning about its inner workings. And Magneto reveals, like, hey, there's a lot of people all working on this one Orcas project. People who are generally opposed to each other, like Hydra's even part of this. And if you remember, I pointed out kind of, I mentioned, like, it shows how far the human race will go in defending themselves against the other being mutants. I brought that up in back in Deconstructing House of X #1. And 4% Hydra. The fact that so many powerhouse institutions of the Marvel Universe are working together on this is pretty telling of the human need for survival against the other. So I like that Magneto says that here too. He's like, if you're curious about the conviction behind this, like, they're even working with Hydra. Check that shit out. How do you like them apples? A really interesting line to me here is when, not Magneto, but Charles Xavier says, we think this is when Nimrod becomes operational, and Cyclops goes, oh, damn. And the image of Nimrod comes up. And I think this is this response, this urgency, is because Moira has told them that, you know, Nimrod symbolizes a step towards the fall of everything of mutant kind. And if you remember, the Tower of Nimrod is represented on the Tower Arcana, which we went over was about war and ruin and collapse. So Nimrod he's instrumental to the great downfall that, you know, the mutants are expecting to experience, thanks to the knowledge brought to them by Moira. I think there's a purpose for that, and that leads me to believe that this is at least Life 10, because I think in Life 9, Moira sees that future, or that's where, you know, the war without end happens, and Nimrod is so instrumental in that. And I think part of that, a part of what she did is went back and warned them, like, by all means, we cannot let this Nimrod come online, because look at the prominence he had. If you read Powers of 10-1, the prominence that Nimrod has is very clear. So I think that was a really nice touch, that they were spurred into urgency to act and attack Orcas when, you know, Chuck is like, listen, this is when Nimrod happens and we can't afford that. Next up, we check back in with Rasputin and Cardinal, who have successfully stolen an indexing device from the Nexus, from the man-machine supremacy. And what this indexing device does is it's not what they went in there looking for, but what they went in there looking for was so hard to find based on the massive amount of data logged by machines that the index card is going to tell them where precisely what they're looking for is. So now that they have this, they can pinpoint what they're looking for, and it's this crucial piece of knowledge that can change everything. And Apocalypse is starting to talk about, you know, knowledge, how it's a gift and a curse. You know, if too much knowledge is given too quickly, that's dangerous. If not enough knowledge is given, that's dangerous. But just the right amount, a little fire from the gods. and can change everything, and it's worth everything to obtain that. What's interesting about this is, as he's talking about it, he's clearly, the obvious context is that he's talking about this piece of information, this indexing device that they've taken. But if you look behind him, there's a large sarcophagus and the shining light on it. It's all very dramatic. And I am just staring at this sarcophagus and thinking about Life 9 and thinking about that broken line and how it's consistent with being comatose or Moira's consciousness being, losing consciousness. And I'm wondering if she's inside there, if that's like where she ended up encasing herself in Life 9. And what we're seeing here is, in fact, Life 9. He's talking about this crucial piece of knowledge. And if that's Moira back there, Moira represents knowledge. She's logging all this information from various lives. And if what we're seeing in Life 10 is her feeding everything she's learned to Charles and Magneto, that is the fire from the gods. Moira is the fire from the gods, and she's adding just the right amount of her knowledge to change the course of that, that timeline that she experienced in that life. So that was really cool. The imagery there leads me to believe that speech was like more than just about the indexing device. So that was cool. They're basically talking about a full assault on the man-machine supremacy now, and it's talking about how it's a suicide mission, and this Zorn is like existential as all hell, and he's like, I've never been more excited for this fight. Another interesting thing is when they pinpoint the information they're looking for, it's labeled Salkin Arc, or Salsen, which, if we remember, is the name of the kennel where Silva was bred and where a lot of these like hound mutants were bred. It says Salkin or Salsen Arc, and it says Genesis protocols. And are we to believe that this is Genesis, like, Book of Genesis, general meaning of Genesis, or Kid Apocalypse? It doesn't have something to do with Apocalypse build. But we also see that it says versions Nimrod, so it's information on Nimrod. So it's all very interesting, and I think it'll be really intense to see what exactly they're looking for in this life, in this timeline. This was a cool scene. For the placement of the imagery, I think, was very important. Year 1000 is where we get to the really awesome, like, high sci-fi bullshit here. This is really, really cool. We see that the beings in this future, they are seeking ascension. They're seeking to be absorbed by a greater intelligence and become part of it. And to do that, they sent this mechanism, Nimrod, into orbit, and they went to go basically seed a planet or a gas giant, seed it, and create a world mind. So it's a planetary intelligence on a kind of a galactic scale, and they did that as kind of like bait. They're like fishing for this greater intelligence, because this intelligence looks for societies with a high enough intelligence deemed worthy to kind of assimilate the phalanx, to assimilate that civilization. And they basically used it as bait when they sent out this Nimbus, and the phalanx arrives to them and is like, hey, we ate your world mine. It was yummy. It was delicious, but we heard something behind it. We heard a message coming from it, and we traced it back to you. And we want to know, what the hell do you want? And they say one word, and that's Ascension. So they're seeking this Ascension, and all of this is based on, our charts in this issue are based on the Kardashev Scale, which is basically like how much energy a civilization is capable of using. And basically what that is it breaks it down to planetary and galactic level. And we find that the Technarch are product of the Phalanx. The Technarch they go out there and they kind of sort and deal with the jobs that the Phalanx sends them on, but they're not aware of it. They're not aware of their place in all of this, but the Phalanx manufacture them to go take care of that, like workers, like worker ants. And then the Phalanx come and do what they need to do. And so it's super crazy right now, because we have to wonder, like, what is gained in this Ascension, and what's gained is universal knowledge and intelligence beyond which these beings have ever seen before. And it leads back to what Apocalypse is saying about knowledge being fire of the gods, too much being dangerous, too little being dangerous, a little bit changing everything. Very, very cool. I mean, this theme came full circle within this issue, and I thought that was awesome. I've seen some crazy theories online that Moira is the librarian. I'm not ready to go that far with my theorizing, but wow, that's interesting, because that would mean she's seeking universal knowledge. She's seeking Ascension, and wouldn't that be bonkers? Like I said, I'm not ready to go there yet, but I thought that was very, very interesting, something I'm seeing online. Leave in the comments what you guys are thinking about that, because this part of the book is super interesting. I feel like it posed more questions than answers. You know, we get all these charts and infographics, which are very, very informative. But as far as the characters, as far as the canon, we still know so little. And actually, I'm really grateful that there's another Powers of 10 following this one and not a House of X, because I feel like it's necessary. I feel like this really was part one of an issue, almost like these two Powers of 10 issues could have been one, but you know, it'd be too big, like it would have been a double-sized issue. But it really feels like this is only a piece of like the pie that was supposed to be Powers of 10 issue 2. I don't know. Masterful art here, loved every second of it, loved these panels. It still has that high gloss look. When the phalanx arrive, it feels so theatrical and beautiful. As far as the storytelling structure, it really rubbed me the wrong way for this issue to end with like a chart. I know that like we've seen that before, like the timelines did it, the Moira lifelines did it, but I don't know, this time it was just like I felt a little bit bummed out that we ended on that note. Think about if it ended with just the word Ascension. I mean, that would have been way cooler in my mind, but you know, minor grudge. But if anybody else has any thoughts on this issue, please let me know your crazy theories down below. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Hey, hey.